1 week from today, President Biden and former President Trump will debate for the first time this election cycle. And with debate ratings and close contests in the 70 to 80 million viewer range, it is a huge opportunity for both candidates to gain some voters. It's also a huge risk. Joining us now, former speechwriter for President George W. Bush and senior editor at The Atlantic, David Frum. First off, though, David, you wrote about how earlier, before the debate was settled on, how President Biden shouldn't debate Donald Trump. And I think you tell me the crux of it, but it was basically Donald Trump is a guy that tried to overturn an election. He's not for democracy. By standing next to him on a debate stage, you're just giving him, you're instilling a certain sense of officialdom, of authority, of status that you shouldn't be giving to somebody who tried to overturn an election.
Yeah, I was worried in that piece about the moment where the moderator says, President Biden will, please, sir, we'll turn to the overthrow of the Constitution in a moment. Right now, we're talking about food prices, that it would diminish both the issues that were at stake. It would also create this strange situation, which is debate is really the wrong term for what this is. This is a joint media appearance. And how often does the President of the United States do a joint media appearance with a convicted felon? I mean, are you going to have pat downs for the convicted felon who's going to appear on the stage with the president? Are there going to be other security precautions? That the whole approach is going to tend to flatten the difference between the two men. One last thing I worry about. What do the moderators call the two men? President Biden, of course. How do you address convicted felon Donald Trump? Do you call him President Trump? Do you call him Mr. Trump? Until very recently, newspapers, and I think NBC, until the early 1970s, did not use the term Mr. for felons.
So this is something that I've been struggling with just as a journalist. How do we cover somebody like Donald Trump, who has been accused of trying to overturn an election? We've seen evidence of him trying to stop the count, refusing to concede the election. He's now been convicted in felonies here in New York. How do you cover somebody like that when they're in a race for president and they're about to be nominated as the party candidate? How do you do it?
Well, I'm not going to be the journalism police and tell everybody else how to do it. And different parts of the journalism ecosystem have different rules. So, for example, you just said a minute ago that he was accused of trying to overturn an election. And that's a very laudable caution for a news gathering organization like NBC. But I think most of us, we were there. We saw it. It's not an accusation. It's something that happened on television. That's like saying, the alleged assassination of President Kennedy, the alleged moon landing. We saw it. It was on our TV. It happened. It's a fact. So I don't know that there's one right answer, but and the debate is now a fact, and you have to plan for that. But it really worried me when it was in the planning stage.
But I would really like one right answer, because it's something that we struggle with every single day. And I am being serious, David, because we've been covering Donald Trump now. I've been covering him certainly for 9 years. And I think it was pretty clear how to cover him in 2016. It has not been as clear since. And it's a struggle every day to try to talk about this campaign as if it were a normal campaign, but also to not seem completely unfair.
Well, let me tell you about the way I do it. And there's a move that you have in journalism circles. There's a move that you'll hear. A bunch of journalists are sitting around the table saying, well, this person tried to overthrow the Constitution of an election, and therefore the Constitution, first by fraud, then by force. And eventually you'll have 2 or 3 rounds, and somebody will say, well, to the folks out there, to the man in the street, the woman in the street, the woman at the checkout counter, none of this matters. What we should be focusing on are the bread and butter issues. And I said, why don't you let them say that? I'm going to cover, as a journalist, what I think is important. And I think the Constitution and democracy are the supreme issues. That's true for me in my work. If other people don't agree, then they may not consume as much as my work, and I'll find out about it that way. But so far, at least the people I'm talking to do consume my work. And so I'm going to go on saying, here's what I think is important. This is my service to you. You have the right, of course, to disagree. But my service to you is to say, the Constitution, democracy, issue 1. I'm not sure that there's an issue 2, but we'll bump down to issues 8, 9, 10. But this is issue 1. And I can't blink the fact that this is, in the whole long history of the United States, with many bad actions, but we never saw a serving president try to overturn the Constitution by fraud and then by violence. That is an unprecedented thing. And I just think the risk is not that we talk about it too much. The risk is that we talk about it too little.
David Frum, point taken. David, thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate it.